How would people talk about you as a leader?
I'm the most hands-off leader some of my team has ever worked with. I was always struggling to find my leadership style.
We've had the pleasure of sitting down with one of the most inspiring marketers here in the UK, Kerttu Inkeroinen.
Right way to be a leader is to be the loudest voice in the room, always knowing what to do, and that's not my style.
Kerttu is currently leading the charge at Lucky Saints, the UK's #1 dedicated alcohol-free beer brand.
Sometimes if I'm not drinking and you're out with friends, that you need to somehow create an excuse for. That's what we are trying to change.
Kerttu is not just shaping a brand, she's helping to reshape an entire category.
Most overrated marketing trend right now.
I think what is overrated is...
If you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
The episode is honest, energizing, and packed with key takeaways. So let's dive right in. Today's program is brought to you by two fantastic organizations. First up is Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. Studio Space gives marketers complete control over their projects, from matching the right agency to your brief, to managing contracts and invoicing, and even tracking all of your spend data all in the one place. They take care of everything and it's totally hassle-free. They even guarantee the work. So check out Studio Space today. Our second sponsor is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity with a mission to make marketing a better place for everyone. They provide grants to help create a more equitable industry and support initiatives that really do drive diversity, inclusion, and create opportunity. The trust has been instrumental in leveling up the marketing skills across the board. And do take a look at their website for more information. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hello, everybody! Whoa, that was lovely. How's it all going? I tell you what, little bit nervous. In truth, we're just about getting set with our live sets these days. But it's a pleasure to be here this evening and to welcome you to our live recording of the Places Will Go marketing show. For everybody in the back, I would appreciate if you listen to me, clearly. The first thing to say is that as Pete was describing all his new features and certainly having a Steve Jobs moment, it was all about reinvention and starting anew and afresh. And it took me back, and certainly Mark as well, to the moment that we kicked off the Places Will Go show, genuinely 5 years ago. Absolutely mental. And we kicked it off as friends, not knowing where it was gonna go and what we were gonna do with it. But here we are today, and I think we're on our 198th episode, which is absolutely insane and having still just the best time. And it was born out of a consequence of COVID in that moment where people were having topsy-turvy and undulating career moments. And we felt that we could be that little slice of moment of inspiration and insight to help others along their journey at that moment. And we enjoyed it so much that we continued, and we continue to this day. So it's with a lot of gratitude that we both sit here today, just to say a massive thank you to all for listening in, tuning in, supporting us, the messages that we get. We're genuinely just two guys really having a go, in all honesty. And it's just amazing how far this little thing, this little side project of ours has now become today. But kind of moving on to the main act of this afternoon or evening, it's with real privilege that we get to introduce an amazing guest. And Kerttu, we've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time. So this is a live recording, and it is going to then be posted up on our channels later on in the next day or so. So would you all just give me a round of applause just to welcome Kerttu to the show. Over to you.
Thanks, Richie, and welcome from me also as well. Great to be here. Great to be 198 episodes down. And fabulous to have you with us, Kerttu. So let's jump straight in. So you've worked for a few challenger brands with distinct identities, but what's the red thread that runs through your perspectives on approach to marketing?
Definitely consistency. So I think from having done first 10 years working on legacy brands like Kleenex, Andrex, Huggies, Coca-Cola, it's really instilled in me the power of building distinctive brand assets and keeping the consistency. I think it is really hard as a marketeer because you don't really necessarily win awards for staying consistent. But I think if you think about your consumers, as much as you love your brand and products, it's only a small part of their lives. So they won't be thinking about your brand all the time. If you appear in a different way to them every time you go and speak to your consumer, you're just not going to build that long-term value in the brand. So that's what I tried to do. And actually, one of my biggest bugbears is the desire to do a rebrand constantly in businesses. And I think often it's so driven by the businesses themselves getting bored of the assets and feeling like they need to do something new rather than consumers actually wanting that, or that being a market-led desire. You rightly said, I have also done a rebrand. So at Union Coffee, I did do that. And that was more of a full positioning flip to be more quality-led because we were launching into grocery and home consumer markets. But that's now been in market for 10 years. With Lucky Saint, there was such a strong brand, sort of distinctive tone already when I joined. It's really been more about sort of building on that and building on more and more distinctive assets, building on the existing foundations rather than going and ripping out the rule book and trying to put their sort of own stamp on it.
How do you keep creativity alive when you're basically playing to a playbook and you know it's working?
So I do really love a brand playbook and brand guidelines. Going back to my consistency point, I think that's very important. But actually, I wouldn't say that we are ripping out the rule book very often at Lucky Saint, but actually our playbook already is about ripping out the rule book of the category. So we talk about breaking rules, honoring traditions, and that means that we look to in, like you say, David and Goliath, they don't have the budgets and assets of the bigger competition. So we need to look at what can we do differently. So we are looking at the beer category and the conventions in that category and looking at how can we do things differently because we are alcohol-free only. So that means, for example, going into Sainsbury's lunch meal deal, that means doing sporting execution in a different way. So a lot of beer brands are in the sporting world, so rugby and football, but they will be executing that towards the people who watch it. So we are very much in the space of executing sport with active lifestyle people who are actually doing that sport. So things like Hackney Half really go into that space. So not ripping out the brand playbook, but actually trying to rip out the category playbook and see how we can stand out and do things differently.
I love the notion of brand distinctive assets. I'm a big fan, and I'm sure any marketer worth their salt invests a lot in that area. In fact, just recently, Karen Nelson Field came out with her latest study that basically talked to this and said that actually if you're in high attention or even low attention channels but have very high distinctive brand assets, you can actually have a multiplier effect. And that was a study that just came out a couple of days ago. But I mean, I want to mix that up with the sort of the David and Goliath sort of story here, because clearly you've been a challenger in the category and you've been able to leapfrog certain conventions. And I just wanted to give us some insight into how you would, maybe where it started from and how you were able to make those leapfrog moments into being sort of, moving from challenger into sort of going into mainstream as you're moving in today.
So probably a couple of those conventions that we've been trying to break. One of them is actually in the distribution, like being able to be on draft. So if you think back 6 years ago when Lucky Saint was launching, there was no alcohol-free beer on draft. Even if you think of a couple of years ago, it didn't really exist, and now it's becoming more and more popular. But I remember our sales team saying that 5 years ago, they would go to a bar and say, would you give us one of these alcohol taps for alcohol-free beer? They would get laughed out the bar. So the convention for alcohol-free beer was always that it's in a bottle. It's in the back of the fridge that you need to sort of shamefacedly ask, could I please have that zero beer from there that's dusty on the shelf? And that's been one of the fundamental thoughts in the business and for the brand from the start, that to change that category perception and acceptability of alcohol-free, it has to be served in draft. So flipping the category in a different way and looking at how can we serve it to consumers in a way that really changes the conventions. But also there's so much stigma still around drinking alcohol-free and not drinking. I still feel sometimes if I'm not drinking and you're out with friends that you need to somehow create an excuse for, like I've got an early morning tomorrow and I'm training on my marathon or I'm doing something else. So you feel like you need to create an excuse for not drinking. That's what we are trying to change. And some of it is around being able to be in those social occasions, being able to have a drink, have a pint, whether you are having alcohol in it or not.
Kerttu, I suffer from that all the time. I don't know if anyone in the room does too. But literally, I was out the other day in Soho House. We're having a couple of beers, and I had a zero bottle beer. And I literally put it to the side table because I didn't want everyone else to notice that I wasn't drinking along with them. So it's absolutely true. I mean, and that was a fairly subconscious thing that I was just sort of leaning towards. So I relate to that.
So Kerttu, we talked a little bit about market leadership, as in leading and growing a market, but let's change gears a little bit in terms of your personal leadership. And what are some of the things that will characterize you? How would people talk about you as a leader?
So for me, they would probably say that, well, actually they have said to me that I'm the most hands-off leader some of my team has ever worked with. I thought about it a couple of years ago because I was always struggling to find my leadership style because there's so much pressure on being, the right way to be a leader is to be the loudest voice in the room, being, banging a drum, always knowing what to do, dictating to people, and that's not my style. And somebody told me this lovely expression, which is be more of a sheepdog, not the husky. So you don't have to always be pulling from the front. You can actually support the team from behind. So I've really taken that approach, and I really rather coach my team into finding solutions, figuring out for themselves, like giving the support if needed, but not dictating, not micromanaging. I mean, I'm not a micromanager. That's not my style. So I think I put a lot of focus on, I guess, the growth of the team and their learning rather than being dictating. And part of that is also one of the things I do with my team, my direct reports. Every week in one-to-ones, we do two-way feedback. So part of that is that growth mindset and learning as well. So I give them feedback every week. They give me feedback every week. It's actually, sometimes it's quite tough because you get, 5 pieces of feedback every week. So
what's the worst one you've had? Come on.
What's the worst one?
In the interest of sharing.
It's sometimes, it's just small things when you haven't quite, gotten to wipe, or you've said something to a team member that made them feel in a certain way. So it's actually been just small things. Maybe not inviting somebody to a meeting that they then felt like, well, actually, I felt really excluded from this piece of information because I would have loved to be in that meeting and you didn't invite me. And for me, it wasn't purposeful, something I didn't think of. But actually, it's really helpful to know it because then you can fix it. Sometimes it's actually nice to also have, sometimes there are good things. And sometimes it's things like, when you did invite me to this meeting or share this piece of information, or this landed really well with the team, and then you can repeat it and you can build on it. Yes, so very much focus on that sort of open culture and feedback and support rather than dictating.
storing up to appraisals at the end of the year and lots of surprises.
Yeah.
So it's clear you work pretty hard to create a context where people can thrive. In terms of what you recruit for, though, what are the raw ingredients you look for in the people you recruit?
So definitely more mindset than skills. The things, especially in scale-ups, I think adaptability and growth mindset. So one of the questions I love to ask is, what was the time when something went horribly wrong and what did you do? How did you cope with that? Because you need to be able to adapt and change and change direction as well. The other one is tenacity. So not throwing your arms in despair when something is going wrong is very key as well in a scale-up. And the other one is, I don't know how to really word it, but it's almost like streetwise for like in the business sense. So some people just know how to make things happen and how to work their way around and figure out how things work, even if they haven't done it before. So looking at those
very
things.
In the interest of working our way around, I'm going to ask the audience if you've got any questions or thoughts. Does anybody want to ask Kerttu a question? Brave enough to be the first one.
Go on, Kirsten.
Go on.
George.
George. Oh.
Hello.
Yep.
So,
Seems to me like you've built a really strong culture at Lucky Saint. I know you've touched upon it a bit in your last answers, but could you talk more holistically how you've worked on building a culture there?
So I think culture building is actually really interesting because it feels like it's evolving all the time, and we actually as a leadership team have been talking about it a lot because we are growing quickly. Even since I joined, we've doubled the number of people in the business, so it changes all the time. I think few of the things what we did as a business, and I actually hadn't joined yet, it was just before I joined, was to get everybody together to agree together what are the values for the business. That's been really helpful, so we try to embed and live those values. What we have actually now been discussing, like should we be re-looking at those since the business has been growing and changing really fast. But I guess the answer to your question is having those firm values is quite helpful because then you can, everything that you do for the culture, you can build on those. But it's an evolving thing, I would say.
Anybody else? Yes. We've got two coming along. There you go. Hi, Amber.
You've had a really interesting and brilliant career, but based on your own question, can you tell us about a time when something went really horribly wrong and what you did?
Yes.
You fell into that one.
So, when something went horribly wrong, I don't know how horrible it was, but when I was with Union Coffee, we were looking at the coffee market, and there was a big trend in cold brew coffee. But this was before it had really taken off in the UK in a bigger way, like it has now. We wanted to be first to market, so we launched a cold brew coffee, and that just didn't take off. People didn't get it. We didn't have the resources to actually support it. It was a different channel to selling ground coffee. So after, I think, 9 months in the market, we had to pull it. So I wouldn't say it was something that horribly wrong, but it was one of those, and I'm actually really proud still that we went for it. And we had the choice between spending lots of time on research or analytics, or we could produce one batch and put it in the market and see what the product market fit was. And actually, the best thing was then to decide quickly that it's not working and put it out to market. But I was literally David was working on the product, was texting me yesterday, sending me a picture of Tesco shelf and saying, there's now about 9 cold brew coffees on this shelf. We were just too early.
So you mentioned you're a hands-off manager. Your team perceive you that way. I was wondering if you could expand maybe on what the value you bring to your team is, and like how do you see other hands-on managers could move away from being hands-on?
Yeah. So I would say the value I would bring is the overall top strategy level, giving direction and framework on which to work on. So the way I see it is my job is to set that overall direction and where we are going longer term. Then within that, you have people in my team who are experts in their areas, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's CRM, whether it's creative, other areas, and then my job is to support them in their roles to make sure that they get the best possible outcome.
Hello. You have a massive job and have done amazing things, and you talked about the transformation that the team have been through from 2 years ago being laughed out of bars to where they are now. But in your seat, does that kind of, it sounds a bit cliched now, but that imposter syndrome, does it ever kick in? Does it ever get you? And what do you do to address those confidence gremlins?
Yes, it does. So question, who hasn't felt imposter syndrome or self-doubt in the past year? I feel like everybody has it. I think there's a lot of conversation around it. Some people are getting almost bored of it. I think it's still worth discussing it because we all feel it. And for me personally, it's been really helpful to hear other people say that they are feeling it. What I would say is 2 things which are helpful for me are realizing that there's no other adults in the room who know better and nobody has all the answers, and actually it's okay as long as you can still make decisions without knowing those answers or having all of the information. That's okay. And the second one would be not to let it stop you doing things. So for me, public speaking actually is not very comfortable, but I, for example, made the pledge 18 months ago, and I did this actually in front of the whole, like you said, business, saying, I'm going to get over this, fear of public speaking and imposter syndrome, and I have nothing to say that people would want to hear. I'm going to force myself. So my mantra was say yes and worry about it later, and that's what I've been trying to do. So as long as it doesn't stop you from doing things, I think it's actually okay, and sometimes it can be really good because it pushes you to learn and do things better. It forces you to look up, to try to improve yourself.
And just to say, wouldn't you say she's doing a brilliant job at the moment? Fantastic. There we are.
Very good. Thank you for some great questions. Back to the stage now. So I love the sheepdog husky metaphor. Yeah. So you've clearly had some good advice along the way. I guess everyone here is trying to figure out their careers and find a way through. So outside of that, what other great pieces of career advice have you had along the way?
Probably the one that made the most difference was from my dad. So my dad is a legend. But I had been working for Kimberly-Clark, Coca-Cola, big brands for 10 years. And I got approached by the job at Union Hand Roasted Coffee. And I was pretty intrigued, but it was a small brand. Nobody really knew it. Completely different track. Much less certainty. It was actually a salary cut as well. So I called my dad and I said, listen, I'm considering this. It's just crazy. I'm on a good track here. Should I even be thinking about this? And he said, so I explained that the role was actually to go in as part of the leadership team and as part of the board. So I knew that I'd be learning a lot more because you see the company much more holistically. Like even if you're in a smaller business, but when you are then in the leadership team, you just see all the nuts and bolts of the business. And he said, well, where are you going to learn the most? and choose that because you have so much of your career ahead. If you can afford it, the salary cut, like don't worry about that, that will come later. But genuinely choose where you're going to learn the most. So I chose the role where I'll learn the most, even though it feels like you're going from prestige name on your CV into something smaller. But it's been amazing, and I've never looked back, and I've learned so much.
I find that fascinating. In fact, Simon Michaelides, he gave us some advice earlier on about really understand the type of marketer that you are and where you kind of find your fit. And I wonder, going from sort of big established brands into being the scale-up person has probably held you in really good stead to carve out your own unique personal brand distinctiveness, perhaps? Distinct brand assets, there we are. All coming back full circle. Is there something in that now? Do you feel that you're sort of comfortable in the scale-up environment and you found your feet, you found your pace of where you want to be?
Yes, and I feel like for me personally, especially the combination is great, and the way around I've done it is great because I feel like I can also bring some of that, structure, bigger brand thinking, how to scale up, how the future might look like, and I can bring that thinking into scale-up brands. So it's also a combination that not everybody has, so that's going to be something that you can sort of carve out on your own area.
So there's lots of people here who would love to have had some of the successes you've had in terms of the awards and the growth and so on. So your chance to give an opinion. If there's one thing that you wish more CMOs would do, what would that be?
Probably in today's world, when there's so much data that you have access to, would be to also not to forget about your gut. I do also believe in the marketer's gut on when things are really right or something just feels like, yes, let's go for this. So probably that. And I think it's probably actually easier in smaller businesses because you don't have as much data and as much insight and information. So you do have to make calls based on your gut a bit more.
So guys, we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I'm really conscious all of you are standing and probably waiting to get to the bar and the like. So what we're going to end on is a few rapid fire questions. So here we go. What first comes to mind, okay?
Okay.
Here we are. The campaign I wish I'd done.
This is easy. Dove Real Beauty. I know it's a classic, but it really had a huge impact on me when it came out. I think that whole realization that bloody hell, everything is retouched. Like, actually, I can feel much better about my own looks. I was at the age when that was really important. So, power of marketing, really great campaign.
Okay, that's still enduring to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, it keeps reinventing itself, so that's a good one to pick. Most overrated marketing trend right now. Don't say AI.
Can I say so the way I'm going to say it is I'm really excited about AI. I think it's brilliant. I think it's going to make us so much more productive, all of that. I think what is overrated is trying to create campaigns that start with the AI as the brief. So thinking about this marketing campaign must be done with AI because that's the thing. Like, that is not the thing. You should have something else at the core of the brief, and then AI might be the way that that's actually executed or comes to life.
There you go. In fact, there was the first full AI advert that went live on mainstream television in the States just today. So there you go. The future is now. Two more. So if you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Believe in yourself, always throw your hat in the ring, and also surround yourself with some really great people who support you and lift you up.
Hey, fantastic. And lastly, what excites you the most about the future of marketing?
It is actually all of this rapid change and what's happening. It's really exciting time to be a marketer and see what's happening, especially for smaller brands with smaller budget. I'm very hopeful that all of the AI, all of the change is going to actually bring lots more that we can do with smaller resources. So that's exciting.
Fantastic. Wow, good timing, Richie. 30 seconds to go. Hey, it's gone past in a flash of the eye. Thank you so much, Kerttu. Thank you for the great questions. But I think we just need to end with a lovely round of applause for Kerttu, saying thank you for your insights and wisdom. Very good.
Thank you.
And we're going to stay for drinks at the bar. So let's meet you all there.